Butterfield. And I do want to remind people to please make sure you're muted, because if you're not and you carry on a side conversation, we can all hear it. So just check. So Scott, I've just been chatting with a little ahead of our program, and really looking forward to this program on grebes and hands-on science in Lake County high schools. And so Scott has worked in starting in 2024 with Pacific. He teaches for Pacific Union College, and he's has a collaboration with Redbud Audubon and a partnership with Robinson Rancheria, Big Valley Rancheria band of Pomo Indians, Upper Lake High School and Lower Lake High School, and they've launched monitoring grebes as a bioindicator of Clear Lake ecosystem health using drone technology and student-driven education and outreach. Boy, what high school student wouldn't want to be involved in that? So in addition, let's see, Redbud Audubon was awarded an Audubon in Action grant from the National Audubon Society to purchase drones, batteries, and some binoculars to begin the process of the Western and Clark Grebe monitoring project. Scott is a Dr. Butterfield is a scientist in residence and adjunct professor of conservation technology at Pacific Union College. So I want to welcome Scott and hand the program over to you, Scott.
Sounds great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this project and to give you guys an update. This will be kind of our first talk now that we are fully funded by the state, and really looking forward. Actually, we are launching our high school program, our official high school program, on for Friday. So it'll be our first official in-class work. So again, I appreciate the time here and appreciate being able to share this exciting and unique project with you all. I know it's a long title, so I won't say this title again, but I do want to highlight a couple of my project partners, especially Donna from Redbud Audubon Society. I'm not sure if she is on or not, but Donna has been instrumental in every phase of this project, from introducing me to high school teachers and principals and vice principals and partners to showing up and helping me get this project started. So it wouldn't have been possible without Donna and Redbud Audubon Society's support. I also want to highlight that this is really as much about about the health of the lake and the monitoring of the birds and the technology itself as it is about really trying to do this through high schools and with high school students and high school outreach, which if any of us have kids or have been teachers, we know how hard that is and how hard it is to get something like that started. And we're just so thrilled to have Robert Keene at Upper Lake High School and Kyla Budwell and Katie at Lower Lake High School. Finally, I just want to call out Floyd Hayes, and I'll talk about a lot of Floyd's work. The project we are getting ready to launch here would not have been possible without Floyd's long-term work at Clear Lake. He had a 10-year study where he went out in the breeding season on a canoe, went to every nest, every bird, counted those across 10 years. So all of our work, is possible because of that long-term data set. So I will jump in here. The slides are not advancing for me. Just FYI.
Scott, I'm going to recommend you stop sharing your screen and then share it again.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, so we will jump in here. So I just want to go over some of the overall goals of our project and of our program. Really, the key part of all of this, the technical side of using drones and using artificial intelligence as part of a monitoring program is hard, but it's not impossible. But really the key and really exciting part of this work and working with local Lake County high schools is to establish a monitoring program that lives on after our grant program is finished. We really want this to live on inside of our high schools, inside of our tribal education centers in Lake County. So when I say establishing a long-term monitoring program, I'm going to help get that started, hopefully across the next 5 years. But this effort is really geared towards establishing a sustainable environmental curriculum inside of local high schools, where the drones and the AI-based monitoring procedures and everything lives on in those high school classes. I'll talk a little bit more about why we're using both Clark's and Western Grebes as bioindicators and how and why we can do that to infer overall ecosystem health at Clear Lake. And then I just wanted to highlight in the introduction, we talked a little bit about this, about funding. So all of these, kind of long-term monitoring projects, especially long-term monitoring projects that are done in an educational setting as part of environmental education curriculum, are often very, very hard to get funding for. And we've been incredibly lucky. There is a program at Clear Lake that is overseen by a committee called the Blue Ribbon Committee for the Rehabilitation of Clear Lake. There's a group of folks that volunteer, sit on that committee, review all the proposals, and then there's a funding a pot of money that exists with the state of California and the California Natural Resources Agency. We were awarded a grant in May 2024, but as I said at the beginning of the talk, we just started our work. That grant just got executed in November 2025 and will run through March 2028. As was said in the introduction, our local Audubon partners have been crucial in this project. We were awarded an Audubon in Action grant that we use to help purchase equipment and to start our in-class program. We had some local District 4 Lake County funds that were also used to expand our in-class programming. And then this summer, and I just want to call out because, I imagine all of you, 30 plus people, dialing in, committed to, participating as local Audubon supporters. We had a fundraising campaign this past summer and fall to basically keep the project alive while, we waited on the state funding. And I was just extremely touched by all of the local support that happened. So I just wanted to call that out before we get going. And once again, the slides are not going forward. So gonna have to. What about sharing it the other way? I did it at the beginning. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, Scott, that would be fine.
Okay. Let me see. I apologize, everybody. All right, well, hopefully this works. Otherwise, I am not sure. Okay, so why grebes? Why grebes is bioindicators? Grebes are extremely sensitive to environmental change, and on the bottom we see a data set that was compiled and published by my collaborator at Pacific Union College, Floyd Hayes, in 2022. We can see that grebe nests declined in the 1950s when pesticides were being sprayed at Clear Lake down to zero, and that with remediation, which started in Clear Lake in the 2010s, we can see that Floyd was finding in excess of 6,000 nests. So again, indication of an improvement in the health in the ecosystem at the lake. But Floyd also found that the grebes at Clear Lake have lower reproductive rates when you look at grebes across California and at other lakes, even in counties right next door. So it really suggests that there's still remediation to do, which is ongoing at the lake. So why drones, AI, and citizen scientists? In the intro, I think folks heard that I'm also a professor at Pacific Union College, and I started a conservation technology degree program 4 or 5 years ago. And the idea there, right, is we have all these big environmental challenges across the world, but we also have these really growing and awesome opportunities to apply new and emerging technologies. And some of those technologies are things like remote sensing in the form of using drones, artificial intelligence, and a range of other technologies. And what Floyd and others found across time, and this will not be a surprise for most, is that going out on a boat each week across the breeding season for a bird like a grebe, which can last 4 or 5 months, is really time intensive, and it can often be very expensive. And that's why these projects and programs often have a very short lifespan. So a major goal of this work, right, was to develop something that's long lasting, can exist within the local high schools and tribal environmental centers into the future. So drones are becoming more and more prevalent within the conservation space, being used for a range of things from fire, forest recovery to doing things like you see here on the bottom is a project I was part of that used thermal remote sensing with drones to count and monitor sandhill cranes. So very similar to technology, it's becoming easier and easier to apply. So the idea is that drones are making our monitoring cheaper, potentially more accurate, reproducible over space and time. And importantly, we're finding more and more that if you fly a drone in the appropriate way over grebes and grebe nests and breeding season, you actually impact them less than if you were going by with a canoe or a boat. We are really excited and really hope, obviously everybody hears a lot about artificial intelligence, both positive and negative. We hope that we will be using it in a positive way. So teaching students how to write code, how to develop artificial intelligence-based algorithms that will help us not only fly the drones, but process all the data from the drones, and hopefully over time develop algorithms that allow us to count individual birds and individual nests in an automated way. And if you think about thousands of videos or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of videos over time, it can really create, an efficiency over time in that work. And again, I'm going to keep emphasizing across the whole talk tonight that a really a driving part of this for me is training a group of local lasting stewards, getting students not only excited about a lake, having pride in the lake, but also understanding what wildlife is there and how that wildlife changes depending on the health of the lake around them. Oops. So when we did the proposal, there was, as you could probably imagine, some concern, some scrutiny over how could it not impact the grebes to fly a drone over them. And of course, you have to fly the drone in a responsible way, have to maintain a certain height above them. But to maybe our surprise when we started down this track, there's actually been a variety of analyses inside and outside of California about the impacts of drones appropriately used, and there's little, if any, impact on grebes during the breeding season. So for those not familiar, this is Clear Lake. It's a giant lake when you get out there, and that's one of the drivers for us thinking about using drones, engaging local high schools and local environmental tribal environmental centers. It's just really hard to get to all of the colony sites, and we see all the colony sites. There are 37 colony sites. This was published in Floyd Hayes's publication in 2022. 37 colony sites. Those in red are where we had the most grebe nests across the 10-year sampling period. So we've really tried to focus our initial work. If you go from the top where we see Middle Creek and Rodman Slough, that's where Upper Lake High School is located. If you see those locations 16, 18, 19, and 20, that's in and around where Lakeport is. And then down there by Cache Creek and Anderson Marsh is where Lower Lake High School is. So really trying to get those high school students not just involved in the project, but involved locally so that it's much easier to get them out as part of their classes during the day. So the grebe surveys starting this spring will happen 4 times a month in the breeding season. So generally May to September, but that can vary depending especially on rainfall and water levels in the lake. Like I said, there's 37 colony sites. So when we visit those, there'll be a drone pilot, which for now is me, but then a high school, a college, and or a travel group participant as well. Each one of those trips will be counting individual nests and birds using the drones. We'll collect that information. We'll take that back to the lab and begin processing through it with our students in class exercises and also as part of our classes at Pacific Union College. And like I said, across the project time period, we'll be developing and testing different artificial intelligence based algorithms to hopefully automate that process in the future. And I'll touch on the data part on the next slide. On the right are some pictures from our initial outreach last spring and summer with our student groups and our high school collaborators at both Upper Lake High School and Lower Lake High School. A really important part of this work is not just a one-time outing or a field trip or an in-class presentation, but really allowing our high school students to participate in all phases of this scientific process. So including them in planning out the drone flights to, maybe eventually when they're trained, helping fly the drones, collect the data, download and process that data, analyze that data, and then communicate out that data. And whether that's, in peer-reviewed science journals, which scientists do, or as part of public forum, giving talks like this, really allowing those students to see the power of science and the power of participating in local environmental science. We've done similar process or similar projects like this in Napa County schools, and we have found that creating flexible student participation is really important For both Upper Lake and Lower Lake High School, we're going to launch what we're calling drone uh, clubs or drone environmental clubs. But over time, we are going to be adding in things like classroom and field exercises. We have a college early program where students can get college credit as part of participating in the project. With funding as part of the project to fund formal internships for the high schools, in a range of other options as well. Really trying to get as many students and excited in the different phases of the project as possible. So I'll start talking about some of our anticipated results because we're just getting ready to launch this work, and I'd be happy to come back and talk about results as they're happening. But the first one I'll focus on is think about this project in two ways, right? One of those ways is we want to understand as Clear Lake remediation and rehabilitation is happening, what's happening with our grebe populations. So that bioindicator analysis, so evaluating the impact of restoration on overall ecosystem health. That's where we're going to go out. We're going to fly the drones in breeding season, nesting season, collect that information. Now, importantly, when we initially set this project up, and we still have hope for this, is we wanted this to be a 5-year project. And I'll talk about why that's important on the next slide. But when our state funding came through, it had a very specific start date and a very specific end date in March 2028. So what that means is we're only going to be able to collect using these funds monitoring data in 2026 and 2027. But we're hoping that as we demonstrate how it's working and proof of concept with our high school students, that we can seek out and get additional funding for 2028, 29, and 30. And why is that important? And I pulled this from Floyd's publication from 2022. As we can see in Floyd's 10-year data set of number of nests across Clear Lake, there's a lot of variation, right? And especially a lot of variation when you look across that 10-year time period. But if you imagine only collecting information, for example, in 2010 and 2011, or maybe just 2010 through 2012, you would be missing a lot of the story and a lot of our ability to understand how ecosystem health is changing and how that is resulting in changing in grebe populations. So I always think about this graph as being a major driver and why it's important to have long-term data sets. And this is, again, part of the driver here about demonstrating cost-effective ways to collect information like this over time so that it can live on within our high school curriculum. So I'll talk then about some of the anticipated results of working with and building our local citizen scientists or training our conservation technologists of the future. Again, a really, really important part of this project is working with our high school student partners to develop the monitoring procedures in a consistent and cost-effective way. And again, I'll continue to emphasize so that these monitoring procedures can live on after I'm no longer a formal part of that project. So when we started working about a year and a half ago with Upper Lake High School and Lower Lake High School and really talking seriously about what this would look like in their classes, I think as we can all understand, high school principals, vice principals, teachers are all very cautious about bringing partners and outside collaborators into high school classrooms, especially in a formal way where it's going to, potentially be part of the high school curriculum. So when we set out and put our proposal in place, we had this vision for connecting our students at all of our high schools, which are participating, connecting them from freshman year all the way through senior year and having multiple cohorts of students as they go through high school. And we can kind of see why that's, an important thing. An important thing about the first year is getting the students excited um, about the project, excited about the idea, excited about Grebes and the lake and lake restoration. And of course, we didn't have to get them that excited about drones immediately. When we told them about drones, they're instantly want to be flying the drones. But we're hoping that that comes later down in the project. But again, the idea was to introduce them freshman year, get them excited about the project, understand how the different pieces of the project come together, understand something about the ecology of the lake, the ecology of Grebes, spending more time at the lake. I was really struck when we did some of our first outreach at the high school, how few students have even spent time at the lake, let alone understanding what wildlife is there, and how that wildlife changes across, in individual years or across years. So again, I just kind of sketch out here what this is going to look like as we launch our drone clubs, our environmental clubs. We allow these students to start participating in different phases of the project. We introduce them to what it takes as a scientist to plan out a big project like this. How do you plan out flying a drone across a lake? How long can it fly? How many videos are you collecting? Participating in data analysis. So again, bringing them slowly along in that project. Then as they transition into, sophomore year, junior year, those that participation hopefully ramps up. And now they're not just part of planning and data collection or analysis, but they're really parts of all phases of that project. And again, I'll just emphasize here, a really important part of this project is not just getting it launched this year, but thinking about how we extend it, outside of March 2028, because then really comes later in their high school career is when they're in their third or fourth year of participation. We have these formal internship programs and even options to basically train them and support them in getting their FAA flight training certification. So again, not just giving them an opportunity to participate in the project, understand something about the lake that's really near them, these amazing birds that live at the lake, but hopefully training them and giving them skills that make them competitive in the job market, skills that make them competitive in uh, applying for college and those sorts of things. So what does the year ahead look like? Like I said, we're just getting ready to launch this project. We got our state funding November 2025. So this next year is going to be a really exciting and a really busy one for us. At both Upper Lake and Lower Lake High School, we've developed in-class curriculum that is basically going to run across the rest of this semester. And I've kind of already talked about this, but we're going to kick off on Friday talking about the project and talking about why Clear Lake, what's the history of Clear Lake, the ecology, how has remediation and rehabilitation changed over time, and how did our project uh, come to be. A really big part and a really big goal of mine is to get the students excited about the grebes themselves. I mean, these are amazing birds, the ecology of the grebes, how their numbers change over time, their breeding behavior, and all of these other things. We'll talk about grebes as bioindicators. So again, getting into some of the science about how their population numbers have changed over time, how we monitor that, why we monitor that, how we do things like statistical analysis to evaluate those trends and indications of changes in population health and ecosystem health of the lake as well. And then, of course, we'll kick into, I think, what the students will at the beginning be most excited about is learning about drones and artificial intelligence and how we are going to start and set up this project so that we launch into our monitoring program late spring into the summer and of course into the fall. While we're doing this, we're also going to be doing a variety of other high school outreach, community outreach, and partner development activities. Because it's such a new project, we want to continue to get our local community engaged and understand what the project is. If you remember those 37 colony sites across the outside of the lake, a lot of those exist we're right across from private property. So working with private landowners to understand how we access those areas, and really talk to them more about the project and get them involved over time. We'll also, like we did last year, together with our partners from Redbud Audubon Society, we'll do in-class presentations to freshman biology classes about the project, to hopefully get enough freshmen excited about it to continue to, build our drone and environmental clubs over time. Like we did last year, and you saw in those photos, we were lucky enough to be invited out to Robinson Rancheria by our partner, Luis Santana. So touring some of those grebe nesting sites, which are accessible from land, and this year being able to demonstrate for those classes what it looks like to launch a drone, to fly that drone over grebe nests and begin our population monitoring effort. A variety of community outreach efforts like tonight, letting more people know about the project, participating in a range of outreach efforts like we do at Robinson Rancheria and Big Valley Rancheria in this summer. A really cool part of this work and part of working at Clear Lake is there's a range of different projects that are funded by the Blue Ribbon Committee and California Natural Resources Agency. And one of those projects is this Truly Restoration project being led by the Tribal Eco Restoration Alliance. So continuing to build those collaborations, sharing the data, making this data open access so that we can have as big of an impact across as big a number of restoration projects as possible. And there's also, as Donna at Redbud Audubon shared with me last week, there's actually a grebe restoration project happening in Plumas County as well. So working with Plumas Audubon Society and seeing if there's an ability to collaborate and share resources as well. So obviously, really important part of not just getting our high school classes and drone clubs launched, but we're going to launch our monitoring project. And when I look at this on paper, it seems pretty straightforward. We'll go to the colony sites 4 times a month during the breeding season, launch the drone, capture the information, bring it back and start processing it. But when you really start to think about what this is going to take to go to the 37 colony sites 4 times a month across the breeding season, constantly refining our methods and collecting this data, it's going to be a year of learning about how we access locations in order to fly the drones, what the data looks like from those drones, and how we can start to build and test our different artificial intelligence-based algorithms. So we're extremely excited about this work and excited to get the kids out there helping us. And then lastly, I'll just, before I open it up for questions, because I think 20 minutes for questions is a really big part of this work, is thinking about how we can extend it and thinking about how we can at least hit that 5-year time horizon, giving a single cohort of high school students an opportunity to go all the way through the program that we're starting and give us the ability to collect 5 years of data and to really understand what those trends in grebes and ecosystem health look like. So while we're busy with the high school outreach program and launching our clubs and launching our monitoring program, a really important part of the next year will be thinking about um, looking for additional ways to fund the work over time. So with that, I am happy to open it up to questions about the student outreach program, the drone clubs, the monitoring effort, or whatever else folks are interested in. And I just want to thank you guys again for having me.
Thank you, Scott. That was super interesting to hear about. We already have a few questions in the chat. I want to encourage folks to add questions to the chat or do the Zoom hand raise thing if you would like to ask it out loud. The first question we have is from Deb. She said drones are often perceived as predators by nesting birds, which can cause stress and nest abandonment. How do you counteract this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and maybe I went too fast on that slide. There's actually been at least one drone based effort with grebes, and they tested out various heights of basically flying at different heights, testing the not just the quality of the data that was being collected, but how or whether it disturbed grebes. So we actually have very clear and good guidance about how high you have to fly in order to collect the data that you need, but have little or no impact on the grebes themselves. Now, I will say that there will always be two of us out there. There's always a drone pilot and an observer. Um, and we will, if we see that they're being disturbed, we'll immediately stop that effort and adjust our flying processes.
Great. Helen asks, will high school students be involved in a class for this where they get credit?
Yes, so it's a great question. So we do have programs like that. We have as I was trying to touch on, we're trying to go slow. All of these high schools are pretty cautious as far as like what formal participation looks like. A lot of our Lake County high school students, um, the content needs to be delivered within the school day. There's a lot of transportation issues in getting students back to a school or to other places for content development. But the credit question is a great one. So we're offering this in a variety of ways. The college, the amazing, and the reason maybe we're collaborating through the college is we're able to offer what's called a college early class. So the students participate, for example, in a semester long class. We would have content across, for example, 10 weeks worth of content. Students participate in lectures and labs and probably some short quizzes, but participation in that class would basically give them college credit. Now, that's a kind of formal, like where they would either some hybrid where maybe we do some of that in person, maybe some of that would be on Zoom. As they go through the process, the formal internships and the way these internships will work, they're not just paid internships, but they're paid internships that they're paid through the grant, but they come with credit for college as well.
Great. We have a question from Chuck. How high do the drones fly during monitoring?
Oh, it's a great question. I believe it is 50 meters. I'll go back. Yeah. So we'll the disturbance trials found that for Western grebes, they can tolerate a drone flying 9.5 meters overhead, but we will be higher than that.
Did I get correctly that to begin with, you're going to be the only drone operator?
Yeah, at the
So you're going
start,
to do
all of the
37
students,
sites?
as you can imagine,
Yeah.
they all want to be drone pilots at the start of the project. So the high school teachers have all encouraged me to try to slowly build towards that, and maybe the training of, again, we are going into this, we're going to be flying over certain parts of the lake, certain state parks where there are colonies. Those come with regulations, and having flights, being able to fly a drone, you need to be certified and permitted with the FAA. So we want to provide that for students. So we might have opportunities where we can fly the drones without permits at other locations to keep them excited and train them as part of drones. But the actual flying of the drones over the grebe colonies themselves will be limited to certified drone pilots. But again, we have funding in the grant, and if we can hopefully extend it a little bit longer, my vision is those students that show interest their freshman year, show interest in participating in planning and data analysis their sophomore year, and then data collection, analysis, AI algorithm development their junior year. Hopefully by the senior year, we're really working with them to train them and to give them, FAA certification as a drone pilot really gives you the ability. This doesn't have to be like an environmental job or a wildlife biology job. Like having a certification like that, could immediately make some of these students, really competitive for jobs.
We got a couple more questions in the chat, but first, I'm curious, when you have the drone in the air, is there a live display or a way
Yep.
to see what, okay, cool, on
Yep.
like a laptop or an iPad you have?
Yeah, so
Cool.
there are a range of different drones, right? So some very inexpensive that might not have that, some extremely expensive that if we lost those in the lake, we would be very sad. So we've landed, somewhere for the beginning of this project, we have a range of different, I'll say, quality of drones, so that if we lose some of the initial ones in the lake or they have malfunctions, but all of them, yes, all of them were able to view um, exactly what we're seeing. And I'll stress, like, drone flying, you do a lot of the drone flying as part of the planning process. So we set up the drone flight paths, the drone, heights that they're flying, how long they're in the air. All of that is set up. Now we can take over, and if that malfunctions or there's an issue in the air, we can take that over and land it or bring it back. But a lot of that flying happens as part of the planning process.
Chuck is curious, who did the disturbance monitoring? I guess in that test study about what the grebes would tolerate.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that paper. It was a researcher by the last name is Lockman. Happy to share that.
Great. And then we have Donna says, this is such an exciting project. I foresee parents and whole families getting excited as nesting season is on and data is analyzed. And she also mentions that the drones stay with the high schools after the project, and that's
Yep.
that's super cool. Um, let's
Well,
see.
I appreciate Donna's positive thoughts. She's as he wasn't on at the beginning. Donna, I praised you and gave you lots of props for helping us get this started.
It really does sound like an incredible project for the kids to be involved with. So the drones are taking photographs, so you'll be able to use those photographs to really analyze the data and count and things like that. That would involve a bigger group.
Yeah, it's all going to be video, so we're going to collect with video
Uh-huh.
as part of that, but we can collect photos as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
the idea
yeah.
what's really exciting and challenging about this first year is we have all these ideas about how we use the data in classrooms. So, I mean, that's kind of the easiest part of this, right? Is to get once we have a lot of the data, there's lots of different labs that we can learn about how you process that data. How do you count, nests and birds by hand out of the videos, out of the photos? How do you start to write things like code that allows us to go in and find just bird pictures or blank pictures and really start to test, some of the algorithms uh, for the automation. But in order to do that, we need to have some of that data, and that's what this first year is going to be about.
It's really cool. We have another question from Vishnu. He says, I think you mentioned that grebe reproduction on Clear Lake was not on par with populations in neighboring counties. How will you know what the annual reproduction was in any year? And if low, how will you be able to investigate the problem?
Yes, so it's a great question. So unlike Floyd's project where he was going up to each nest and each bird and counting individual uh, eggs and hatchlings over time, we are just going to be inferring reproduction from those nest counts over time. So looking at the adult grebes over time and inferring that. I will stress like there are a variety of other projects, and I just touched on it when we were talking about partnered development and outreach. There are a couple other grebe specific projects that are associated with individual restoration projects. And we'll be doing, hopefully, collaborating on some more intensive on the ground Grebes assessments as part of those, and maybe being able to scale that as part of a lake-wide reproduction effort. But it's not going to specifically be a part of this project.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. I want to
Yeah.
encourage everyone, if you care to turn on your camera or audio real quick and say, thanks, Scott. It's always nice to see some smiling faces.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank you
you,
Scott.
guys for
Scott,
having
Thank
me.
so
you,
much.
Scott.
And thank you, Redbud
Thanks very
Audubon,
much.
for getting the grant.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Yay, good luck with your project. Sounds
Yeah,
really,
it's going
yeah.
to be great.
I want to be one of the students.
All right, sign up, sign up.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll take lots of photos of the students in action and maybe get some interviews with them. And
Yeah,
this sounds
I have to admit, Donna is much better. My other partners are better at taking the pictures, but yeah, that's part of having a bigger team is having other people that can help and remember to take photos. So you're not the guy in the car at the end of the day and you're like, oh my gosh, we just spent 5 hours out there with the students and I have no pictures. So yeah,
Yeah,
awesome. Well,
I there was something I was curious about, and that is, I have kayaked around the lake quite a bit over the years, and you see years where there's huge population of grebes nesting, and then very few successful, uh, nests where you actually see the babes making it. And so I'm wondering what kind um, of data are you involved in collecting any other kind of data that might be affecting the or influencing the overall success of the nesting?
yes. So like I said, it's not going to be a specific part of this
Uh-huh.
project,
Yeah,
but Floyd
yeah,
Hayes's
that.
work that he published in 2022, he did a lot of that. So looking at nest predation, survival of hatchlings, and looked
Mhm.
across a range of reasons for why grebe populations, existed um, as they did. And like I said, I'm hopeful as we get our project launched and there's more restoration projects that might not directly be part of grebe and grebe projects, but might indirectly be part of those that maybe we could add that on as an additional component. I don't know if Donna has anything to add.
No, but I'm really expecting a lot of nesting this year.
Yeah.
The water quality is better. We have tens of thousands of grebes already. I have, I've seen them in places where I don't usually see them. There's so many. So I think nesting season is going to start early, and who knows, it might be going a lot longer too. So big project, and Scott, I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you both for being here tonight, and
Yep.
especially Scott for your program. And we hope to get a follow-up.
Yeah, of course.
And good luck
Hopefully I
on
get,
Friday.
I might ask, is there a way, if people are at all interested in finding out more, do you have a website? Does Redbud have a way that people can get involved if they want? Uh, Maybe you can speak to that.
yeah, we don't have a specific project website yet, but that is a great idea. We've been thinking about all of these other things and just getting the project started, but I think that's a great idea. Donna and Redbud have been great about including updates in the project on Facebook and other social media outlets. But yeah, I feel like we could share my contact info, and I'm happy to have as many collaborators and participants and helpers as possible.
Thank you. And thanks again for being here tonight. I think we can close things up now.